Welcome into Coffee and Chel for Wednesday, December 10th. New content day. We're going to talk about a lot on today's episode, including the new icon Fedorov, new in quotes, obviously our newest top-end defenseman in Hockey Ultimate Team. Another and final Sharks theme team update. That one's going to be a pretty big topic, I feel. And then I want to talk about some other general stuff in gaming, as well as a pretty crazy law that got announced in Australia. Anyways, we're gonna spend a lot of it talking about Hockey Ultimate Team because today is the beginning of me using my theme team for the Sharks finally. But I do want to start. I mentioned this in the last episode where we're getting towards the New Year's resolution era, the new year, new me. And I thought that every episode I'd talk about some of the things that I'd like to do and maybe spark some thoughts for you guys so that, you guys think about it. I know it's so frustrating because I think that New Year's resolutions and stuff like that is such an odd thing because no one keeps them because nothing really changes. You go to bed at, on December 31st and you wake up, it's not like your life is completely different. It's like, oh, now we're going to go. I found that it doesn't really help, but I find that the one thing it does is that it offers some sort of mental clean slate, whatever gets you going to improve your life and things like that, or just improve, what you want to improve is important. So yesterday I talked about how next year I will be playing hockey. I was dedicated to trying to get into this league that's very difficult to get into in my area. And if I don't get into the summer league that starts, I believe, in like March or February, I'm legitimately just going to go find an hour because hockey, of all the sports I've played at any time in my life, hockey is the only sport in which you simply, well, I'm sure there's others, but hockey is the only sport that I've played of all the main ones in North America where you cannot bring your baggage from life. So let me give you an example. You've had a hard day at work. Timmy is really, really pushing those TPS reports. You don't know if you're going to be able to finish them by the weekend. You've got a quality review coming up. You don't know how that's going to go. Are you going to get your Christmas bonus? What are you going to get your wife for Christmas? Are you going to be able to afford it? All of that, whatever it is. All right. You go and play slow pitch or even hardball. Okay, whatever, baseball of any kind, right? You will be at the plate and the sport is not fast enough or, immediate enough to wipe out the thoughts of a really hard, stressful thing in your life. You go in the field, it's a lot of quiet, and your mind doesn't shut off. And if you have something that's stressful enough, it doesn't take it away. It helps, right? It's a distraction. Same thing with basketball, stuff like that. Hockey. If you are not an absolute unbelievable pro or you're playing in a league where you're so much better than everywhere else, it is so fast and it is so difficult and there is so much going on that you literally are just focused on surviving. Even if you play like the lowest level beginner hockey, there is so much going on that I've found that every time that I've played hockey, regardless of what's going on in life, start to finish for that hour, I can't think about anything else. And maybe that's different because I haven't played hockey a lot in my life. I've probably put in maybe 200 hours on the ice, maybe. And but that's what I've always loved about hockey, is that no matter what is going on in life, for that hour, that is it. And it is, the work and all that. But so I talked about how I'm going to start hockey. But then I mentioned that, I mentioned off the cuff, like it could be whatever you want. Do something activity-wise. And I said boxing. And it got me thinking that, like, one thing that I would love is to, I think as you get a family, it doesn't just have to be kids, but it could be marriage, things like that. You have a significant other. God forbid you get into a situation where it's not self-inflicted, you're mouthing off or whatever. Maybe you have you have too many pops, and you say something to the wrong person. But I think that you should have the ability to give yourself the best possible chance to defend you and your family, whether that's a break-in, whether that's, something like that. And I think that, I've been in fights in my life, but I haven't been in one since I was in college, and I am not a big guy, and I have learned my lesson. I think that anyone that has been punched in the face whether it's deserved or not, changes your life. You know the battles that you can get into and what ones you shouldn't. And I know the limitations that I've got, but I think that it would just give like a nice little confidence, right? So I'm looking into boxing, looking at a couple boxing clubs around my area. I just think that's probably, again, I'm not looking to be like a fighter or like even to join something for like the exercise of it. I think I just want more of the confidence to know that, if something hits the fan, whether it's my friends, my family, my son when he's older, like his friends, like all that kind of stuff, like being able to just give myself the best shot to defend. And so I was looking up some other things. When I trained at Performance Center, when I was training for ball last year, there was a kid that did Muay Thai and just a freak athlete. And I was looking at the Muay Thai too, a little bit interesting. A lot more kicks, and I'm not looking for that stuff. Like I said, I want practical. I think boxing is probably the most practical. Jiu-jitsu and all that stuff for sure can definitely help you in a street fight. I don't know why I'm thinking about this. Again, I'm not like looking to start Fight Club, but it got me thinking about things to just maybe that'd be a nice little box to check, So thought that'd be interesting. So again, let me know your guys what you're looking into for next year. Again, I don't think it should be I think the resolution of like, I'm going to hit X or I'm going to lose X amount of weight and things like that. I'm past that stuff. I think the better way to go is like, I'm going to be a hockey player. I'm going to be a boxer. I think that's a more effective way to look at it as opposed to like, I'm going to win my rec league in hockey. Things like that. So anyways, on to Hut. Okay, so someone in here mentioned when we were talking about, we've discussed a lot about how Hockey Ultimate Team is just, it's going the way of all the other Ultimate Teams where they're just squeezing for money. Like, and all of the content and things like that, well, it is better than it's ever been, in my opinion, just from like interesting, exciting FOMO. Anytime that something comes out and you can't afford it, but you really want it, I think that while that sucks and it's not good for the consumer, you have to admit that means that it's at least good content. I can't tell you for how many years when stuff would come out and I had a God Squad, I just didn't care. Because there was too many parameters they were trying to check off as opposed to just make an insane card. And now they're making insane cards for the sole purpose of getting us to spend our money, which is, again, it's the business. I understand. But someone in here a little while ago was like, just wait until they catch up to Madden and they start doing promos for out of position and weird stuff like that, and them being the best cards in the game. And I couldn't help but die laughing when the Fedorov got announced, and I thought exactly what I apologize, I couldn't go and find it. I couldn't remember what episode it was from, but if you're listening to this, just post in here on this episode. I thought it was hilarious. Now, they've done out of position stuff before, but it's always just tied to that specific event. This was like, this is one of the most popular players who's finally back in a Hut, already received a high-end card, and it's like, so it got me thinking a couple things. One, all right, Fedorov on defense. I didn't know. Admittedly, my knowledge of hockey from 2000 and below, I wasn't even 10 yet. Turned 10 in 2000, right? So while I loved hockey, I had no idea that Fedorov actually played defense on the 97-98 Cup team. Like, I had no idea about that, which I guess makes sense because he was always regarded as one of the better defensive players in hockey. And I went and did my due diligence and looked around, and apparently there's a lot of hockey pundits that thought that if he ever played a full season on the back end, that he'd win the Norris. So when it comes to like out of position, cards or players, this one makes sense. Like the Brent Burns or the Bufflin, like that's really all we have for like the longest time. But the Fedorov one made sense. Okay, I'll give them that. I get the sense with the amount of repeat high-end cards, whether that's MSPs or Team of the Week cards, that all they're doing is looking at, okay, what cards moved the needle? What cards got people to either spend money or spend all of their resources and engage in the event? Oh, Fedorov hasn't been in the game in years, one of the most popular players that wasn't in Hut. Obviously, everyone made Fedorov. On top of that, unbelievable card. They're like, hey, instead of releasing a new icon, how about this? And I don't think that's entirely the case, but I can't help but get the feeling that they're looking at, okay, here are the cards that are most sought after. Let's do them again because maybe we'll get more money out of it. Like, that's what I get the sense of, right? And again, like I mentioned, I don't think that's the entire thing behind it, but I think it's a part of it. And something that the old content team used to do, and obviously that, like I mentioned, the old content team, there was a lot of great they did in retrospect, but there was also a lot of boring, a lot of lack of innovation. When I've talked about this a lot when I got asked to apply to be on the content team. I think it was, like I say, it was back in like NHL 21, I think. I wasn't guaranteed a job for the content team, but I was asked to apply for it. And I turned it down, monetary reasons. I wanted to shoot my shot. I wanted to be my own boss. I loved creating content, and unfortunately EA has like a hard, you're not making content. And I also think that it would be a really bad idea. Okay. I made the cards and then it's like, let's review the cards that I made. You know what I mean? Like it'd be bad luck. Anyway, so I got walked through the process of some of the things and philosophies when it comes to creating content. I know back in the day, Nicholas talked about Shadow, for anyone that knows on Reddit. He would basically make it where MSPs, there was no repeat MSPs of player items. Okay. There was also no repeat teams. So like, a perfect example was the Sharks Next Gen event, right? Last year. Okay. It had 3 Sharks Master Set player items. It made sense from if you were to take the event in a vacuum, the 3 of the more high-end rookies in the league last year, Askarov, Macklin, and Will Smith, understood. Okay. However, like that would have never happened, right? Because they used to try and appease every fan base, which from a consumer is a great thing for the consumer. However, there is admittedly so much less Nashville Predator fans than there is Montreal Canadian fans. So if you were trying to, again, make money in a business and keep players engaged, and you see your player base and 20% of it is from this one province in Canada, what do you think would be a better business decision, right? Not great for the entire customer base, but great for engagement and the game in general, if from a business standpoint, right? So it's just, it strikes me as like a lack of creativity. Or not, again, I don't even think it's a lack of creativity because I think that they know or they're instructed that they've got to hammer down on the things that move the needle from engagement or money. And if you take the data available to you and you see what is being used and made and you double, triple down on it, then again, it makes sense. Not great for the consumer. This is all things that this year, if we had this content structure, the line combos, how we do events, even just the weekly format, we had ranked and cup chase and all that. If we had this in NHL 21 or 22, we might have had like the best era of Hockey Ultimate Team and it would have been unmatched. Okay? That is what I truly believe. Right? With the philosophies of like, let's try and get the consumer to love or appease everyone and not starve them for money and their collection, with the line combo stuff and the team building aspects that they introduced this year, I think, man, it would have been a really good combination. But again, it's the evolution of the gaming industry. It's the evolution of Ultimate Team, and Hut is just finally catching up. And the consumer is obviously the one that suffers in that sense because, like, the Fedorov 90 overall card is awesome, but there's no discount. That was another thing. The old content team, if a new card came out, if it was rare, a new card came out and got and that already had an MSP or even a high-end item, like a Star of the Month card, for example, they got a discount making that next card, right? Now that stuff is gone because that doesn't help the bottom line, right? So if you made Fedorov's icon card, first thought, 86 overall icon into the 90 overall Fedorov, even though it's different positions, you would think, hey, I made this Fedorov. Let me have this better version. Maybe you're a Red Wing fan, okay? No, they don't do that anymore, right? And it doesn't surprise me. Again, if you go into a content release and you are upset by the cost of what things are in terms of the game, don't be surprised. What is the best way for them to make money? And that is what it is. It's not acceptable. There is no other video game that does, you know what I mean? That isn't like this. It's a business. It stinks. But like, you have to find a way then to enjoy what they release, which is what we'll talk about in a little bit, right? So I think that if you look at not only just like the discount, right, and figuring out what the player base wants and all of that, they're definitely leaning into that. But even if you look at the cards they release that are the cards that you can only acquire if you have spent money in the game when they are immediately released. Okay, so like as a no money spent player that's been playing all year, I could get really close to making Fedorov when he was released. I would have gutted my entire team. Okay. So for anyone that got that Fedorov, you probably have spent money at certain sections, or you grinded the market and didn't play the game. You literally just like, you know what I mean? Like those are the only subsection of the player base that could have afforded them, right? If you look though, all of those types of cards, they got the best abilities. And again, I know that they have the data available to them that allows them to see what abilities are being used by the player base and the percentage of them, right? And if you look at master set player items from events, normal events, right? They don't have a lot of the high-end quick release, unstoppable. There's some, very few. You know, it's a lot of ankle breaker, big tipper, you know, like warrior. There's probably a reason for that too, guys. Again, because a master set player item you can get for free and pretty easily by playing the game for an hour or two a week, right? You can get a master player item. So that's a little frustrating too, because and if you want, again, for an example, like MLB's content is the best structure of any Ultimate Team game. However, I've mentioned this, and MLB fans that don't grind the game or maybe, you know, don't understand entirely because they just hear that it's so good, the best cards are in chase packs. Like the best of the best are in chase packs, and you cannot get them if you are no money spent until, and even there's really no market drop. You have to get lucky and you got to save all your pennies, and then eventually maybe you can afford them, or at a later date you can get them, right? But there's a lot more ways to knock down the cost, right? But it is just every game is like this, and nothing's going to change. But when I saw Fedorov, man, again, cool idea, and I guess it's like just a random thing, but there's so many top-end players, and we're like so many icons. Like we used to have too many. We used to have too many. There was 60 power-up icons in NHL 22, and they got a +1 overall at the end of the month, and 95% of them weren't usable after the first month of the game, even with the +1 overall until the very end, right? Until they hit 99. But we had 60. We've got a slow drip, and the repeat stuff gets frustrating because there's so many players that can be highlighted that you got to let them breathe, man. But, you know, anyways. So, update on the theme team. Fellas, it is done. The theme team is complete, but I want to talk a little bit more about yesterday because it was, again, another confirmation to myself that I'm doing the right thing for how to get myself to enjoy the game in the landscape of what is happening from the business side of Hockey Ultimate Team. So here we are. All right, the theme team for the Sharks in all of its glory. And again, for anyone wondering why I'm not using alumni, I really just want to try using the players that I see and I watch every single night. Yesterday was interesting, though. So the grudge match event came out, and thank God there was no Sharks Master Set player item. It's getting a little awkward at this point, okay? I understand. And there was no Sharks event item either. And it was weird because I actually cared about event items. So Tuesday comes along last night, and it is the first time that I have been doing this job for 5 years now of covering the content every week. And I've never really excited outside of a new event to see what's coming, because I know the way that I normally play Hockey Ultimate Team, that a lot of the stuff that comes out during the week is not going to make my lineup. When you take a look at my God squad, my not a dollar God squad, right, that I've been grinding to play, no money spent. A lot of cards that come out yesterday simply not going to make my team, right? However, yesterday Jeff Skinner gets released, and I am more excited than any master set player item that has been released in the game. And I just thought that was so funny to me, because now it's like the final piece of boredom in Hut for me has kind of been alleviated, because on Wednesdays now, I'm going to be just looking, is there any Shark that I can get? Is anything and if there isn't, okay, right? But it's the hope and intrigue that doing a complete theme team, what it gives you, right? And my ranked climb is going to start today for anyone that wants to watch it on Twitch. And I'm going to record and upload, and I'm going to cut out all the fillers. So anytime that I'm talking between periods or between games, you're going to get unedited, unfiltered gameplay where I'm going to try and talk you through while I'm playing, stuff like that. And just the struggles and my experiences of my skill level with a team like this. Now, the Sharks have a great theme team if you were to do just current players. And if I were to do alumni too, this I could actually make an unbelievable team. And if I actually cared about line combos, I could make it even better. But I just want to use the players in the way that I'm watching them in real life. And I cannot wait to do this. So, like I said, Jeff Skinner gets released, and I am stoked. But here's what else happened last night. So talked about the Manctuary and how at the end of the day, I've gone up to my, gone down to my room now, and I'm just sitting on the couch, playing video games, watching hockey. Sharks game was on last night. I got the itch to go and play Hockey Ultimate Team off stream so that I could finish the grudge match collectibles and whatnot, so that I could do that 86 overall trade-in set, and I pulled Skinner. But I actually wanted to do cup chase and grind out my objectives and all of that. And while I'm doing it, I try to be really self-aware. So like when I'm enjoying things, when I'm not enjoying things, I try and clock it. And I just laughed. I was like, I can't remember the time where I'm this excited or just like okay and have an interest of doing something in the game that I normally cannot stand. I hate offline play. I hate the chores, all of it. But it was so funny because an 86 overall Jeff Skinner, which is actually a half-decent card, to be honest with you, is not going to make 90% of players' teams, right? But on mine, he's extremely important. I had an 82 overall Jeff Skinner. Now this new 86 has 90 skating and quick release. And now, like, that's awesome. So I think it is just the best way to go, okay? And I'm now excited for all content days. I've got something to do, and I want to talk about what to do with your collection and cards for anyone that is interested in doing this, okay? Because I think it is important that we kind of take stock of what, if you're going to do this, the downfall or the bad parts and the good parts of it, okay? So number one, if you're going to do this, like I said, you need to do all of the untradeable stuff. Don't ignore that. You need to have a God Squad. You need to have a team that is, okay, I've been struggling using my theme team. I need to go and beat the brakes off someone or the computer. So if you have a God Squad that you slowly work on, and if you play casually too, it could be you play 3-4 hours a night, have a lineup that is your best cards. And why I recommend doing that is because if there is not a theme team item that comes out and you are addicted to NHL, then what do? Okay, because then nothing comes out, you're bored, right? A new event comes out, you've ruined a new events because, there's no shark, so I don't care. The beauty of having a God Squad is that while you're playing the game, passively getting your collectibles and your stuff, the free Master Set player out of every event is very easy to acquire. So what you do is you do that stuff, and then you make the best card from that event that goes in your main team. That gives you a sense of like chasing stuff when a theme team card does not come out once you've built your theme team. And I think that's very important. So all of your untradeable cards, you need to give value to them. And if you're building a theme team, untradeable cards give you no value. So if you have no value for untradeable cards, then you've wiped out 90% of your rewards, 80%, because the XP path gives you it, that kind of stuff. But you need to have some use for that. Okay, so if you're untradeable cards, you just save it all for new stuff that comes out that goes in your God Squad, right? Everything else that you get tradable, I've talked about this a lot. If you want to make money and you want to use your resources well, you wait until EA releases something that requires that overall. Okay, so again, though, if you want to be whatever, just sell your tradable stuff. Again, you'll lose a lot of coins. I've learned that over doing Market Monday. And then you have the coins available to go buy a new card that comes out when the new card, like if Skinner comes out and I don't get him in that pack, right, in the choice pack, then I gotta buy him, and I would have needed coins for that, right? So that is what I would recommend you guys do. it makes content days so much more fun because, again, if you don't have a card that comes out for your team, then at least you've got something you can use your own turtle. Suzuki, for example. I'm going to make Nick Suzuki because I think he's going to be a great card on my team. I really want to use him. So I'm going to make him on my God Squad, but there's no other shark from the event other than Skinner that has come out that I want to use. So just thought that I want to touch on that because I know a lot of people are like, when somebody doesn't come out, they get bored, but they're addicted to the game. So that is the way to do it, right? That you've basically given a reason for everything, right? And I think that's important. So I also wanted to touch on the Sharks have a very easy theme team to do, all right? But I do want to touch some other examples of theme teams. So I make fun of the Minnesota Wild fans because, or not make fun, I feel bad because, they just don't get any new cards. Here is an example of pulling up their line combos and players. Something that I would recommend if you want to do what I did in my team. If they've played in the NHL or if they've been on the roster, things like that, you can have whatever parameter you want for a theme team. I'm just giving an example of mine. Here's what the Wild would look like. So Kaprizov at 86 is fine. You've got this Marcus Johansson, Eriksson Ek. You've got a line of like 86 and 85s. You had this combo Nexus line, which is actually kind of cool. You get a +3 overall boost, and you've got 3 players that go together quite well. Then you've got Hartman, Liam Ogren, and Vladimir Tarasenko. On defense, I mean, you've got it way better than I do. So you've got Brodin and Faber. You've got Zeev Buyam and Spurgeon. And then you've got Damon Hunt and Zach Bogosian. And then Wallstead and Gustafsson net. So this is not a good squad, right? But it isn't so detrimental where you're using base cards. Like, if we're being real, I have 2 Sharks on my team that are base cards. I've got Toffoli and Ferraro. So technically, the Minnesota Wild have had everyone in their roster get some sort of upgraded card. Obviously, at the high end, they just haven't gotten any. Oh, and to absolutely no one's surprise, because again, there's so many QC players out there. I mean, the Montreal Canadiens, again, a large portion of the player base. Your squad is gross. You got Caulfield, Suzuki, 89 Slavkovsky. You got Demidov. Kapanen's got a card. Even the new Texier. He's been on the team for like a minute. He's got one, right? You've got the 89 Kirby Dach, Jake Evans. You've got Gallagher, Newhook, and Patrick Laine. This Patrick Laine, for anyone that wants to know, you can't get him anymore. He was a captain during the the launch week. And then on defense, you got Matheson and Dobson, Struble and Hudson, Jackeye and Reinbacher. Technically hasn't played a game in the NHL, but, and then you've got Montembeault and Dobish. So, every team has some decent options, but this would be just an example of how fun it is. Like, you can see that every single release, every single content day, there might be something. And I think EA's done a good job where every event, if you go back and look, every team has gotten a card. And while it's not going to be a great master set player item or even a high 80 overall or whatever, sometimes it's an 82, right? But that 82 matters to you. And that makes the content days so much better. When it comes to what I'm doing for playing the game now, again, I play quite a bit. It is my, my job. Ranked is going to be only my Sharks team. And again, I will upload every single game. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to be bad or good because it's probably going to absolutely demolish my algorithm because not everyone's going to just want to watch unedited gameplay. I think there's a good sense of it, but again, 82 games and 82 videos. I don't know. I'm probably going to do 2 games in 1 video, or maybe I just make it super long form and go an hour, and however many games I can get in an hour. Maybe that's an easier way to do it. And again, I'll edit out the fluff, but it's really just going to be that, and you're going to see the good and the bad because I guarantee you it is not all going to be sunshine and rainbows. I'm a pretty good player. I'm confident that I can do half decent, and I'm going to stun a lot of people that have God squads. But there are going to be games where I just get absolutely torched because I've got base Mario Ferraro on the team. And I accept it, and I'm excited for the challenge. But what I'm going to do is ranked for theme team, champs for God squad. That's another reason why you want to have a God squad, why you want to slowly build up a team so that you can play champs. You get that competitive itch. I think it's important that when you're getting absolutely smoked with your theme team because you've hit the plateau, right? Having that better team to go to is just really important. And then if you don't play online, cup chase. Do your theme team do your theme team on Superstar or whatever difficulty you can do. And then when you start to struggle, use your God squad on Cup Chase because that's how you play the game. That's just what I'd recommend. And I'll get burnt out on this, but I really think that I have maximized the way to be excited or have an interest in everything that I'm doing in the game. So I just wanted to get that out there. I think that the journey for this is going to be very interesting. So, next, I've talked a lot about the gaming industry, and I've been following Call of Duty quite a bit. I've talked about this a lot. Call of Duty, the last release of Black Ops 7, is I don't want to say the peak or the beginning of the end, but I think if we look back in 5 years of big AAA studios that spend billions of dollars, $1 billion on a game, and they're just trying to milk their consumer base and see how much money they can get out of them before having to actually innovate and create a good product, I think that this is going to be a pretty good point in 5 years, because they have churned out, Activision has churned out a Call of Duty game basically every year. It's an FPS sports game, right? And it's been one of the most successful franchise, I believe, other than Pokemon in all of video games, right? So it's not like, they're bad or they haven't done it right. But you can clearly see that rising prices of just the world and gaming, and then milking, people for all their money, and then lack of innovation has hit its peak with this game. And we got our first bit of news from Activision stating that something needs to change. And this is what I talk about in Hut a lot, but for anyone that doesn't know, I'll give you the rundown. So Activision announced that they are changing their release strategy moving forward. So it's been a yearly release for a long time now, and it's going to stay like that. It's going to be a yearly release still. I think that'll eventually change. But they're no longer going to do back-to-back releases of the same game. So Modern Warfare in 2022, and then they did another one in 2023, and they did Black Ops in 2024, then Black Ops in 2025, which kind of makes sense. Like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you flip-flop? But the reason why I think this is big is because they could basically do no wrong. A new Call of Duty came out. It took over Twitch. It took over the gaming industry, made $1 billion, and then the engine just continued firing. This is the first time where they've been like, so we can't just print infinite money. All right, let's make this little change. Maybe they don't want the same game twice back to back. We'll change it up a little bit. This is when you see things like this from gigantic companies, tells you two things. One, that the company or the player base has not engaged. Remember, I talked about this a lot. Not spending money in the NHL video game is not going to solve the issue of the problems you have with content and the fact that they're trying to bleed you guys, not us. I don't want to say us because I don't spend money in the game. You guys for your money out of your game when they release new content, right? I tell you that engaging is just as important. So if you buy the game, you've given them their money, and then you show them that you're playing the game, even if it's no money spent, you're still engaging. Or if you're using all of your resources to make fantasy items, right? That's showing that you're still engaging. The only way to get gigantic companies that have infinite stranglehold over an industry is to not engage, right? And this Call of Duty release at the peak of just like games being slop, and there was AI involved bad AI involved in creating Black Ops, where they used it in a lazy way. Right? I think AI in video games is extremely important. I think it's going to make video games far better eventually when you can do the stuff that takes a lot of time for developers in the background developing stuff, right? Not artwork and animations and stuff like that. You don't want to see that AI being used because it's not at a level where it's accepted yet, right? So that was massive. And the other thing when you see something like this is that this is the first shot before they have to change even more. So again, once they've moved off of this and now they're like, okay, we have to change our strategy. Again, it's a very minor one, but that's just the first thing. So they're like, maybe this will help and everything will go back to normal. But when it comes to Hockey Ultimate Team, I'm just going to bring this back to Hut. Like I said, man, when you don't engage, that forces change. That's it. And stomping your feet and doing pack strikes and all that stuff, you could not buy packs in it. Yes, that will make them change their strategy. I mean, for one, last year, to an extent, last year, for example, no one did sets, right? No one was doing sets. They weren't engaging in it, and they released sets in the store for good valued coins. Like, remember the pack that was an icon, an X Factor, and whatever? And it was like, wow, that's the best way. And a team builder, like, that's the best pack, and you would use coins for it. And they would release it because they weren't making any team builders. No one was doing the sets because they couldn't afford them, right? that forced it, but you would get, but then they put that in the store. It's not like they gave that pack where you could earn it by playing. They put it in the store, people bought it, and that. But again, it forced change. So I think that this is going to, in a couple years, especially when the price of RAM starts to really impact consumers from like an AI data center standpoint, when trillions of dollars are being invested into AI data centers and it's absolutely demolishing the consumer market for PC hardware. When that starts to hit the consumer and the trickle down in video games, you're going to see people just not be able to afford it or not justify it, right? Like your casual player of NHL, you're going to get your hardcores, the hockey diehards, okay? People that are addicted to HUT, ESHL, whatever. It's the guys where it's like, I've played NHL in a couple years, I'll spend $80 on it. Sure. Okay, I'll buy. Or maybe it's on sale for 40. What happens when the game is $130 for the base game? That's coming, guys. So, and it's going to be even worse when consoles, the next generation of consoles, RAM is in consoles, guys. Like, it is going to be over the days of under $1,000 console are gone. And that will be the beginning of the end of console gaming. The only reason console gaming has been as big as it is, bigger than PC gaming in a sense of from like a base level consumer, is the entry point. Console is only $500 to buy, even less in some generations. A PC is $1,000. That is why PC has less of a player base. But now, over the years, people have been able to build PCs that at least run a game for a price that's similar to consoles, and that's when it's going to be like I mentioned, Xbox will be gone in 5 years. It won't be a console. You'll have your old one that you can play old games on and maybe play the new games on, but eventually Xbox is just stopping, and because they're going to a cloud-based format. So, last thing before we get, or something that we get into before the comments, I was looking at news, and again, I understand that not everyone wants to talk about this, but I'm just trying to bring up some interesting topics to every episode. Australia's banning social media platforms under 16 years of age. I thought this was very interesting because it's wild to see the cycle of technology, right? So something new comes out, Facebook, MySpace, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, or Instagram comes out, it generates buzz, and then explodes into a global phenomenon like TikTok, right? And then what happens is it gets demonized. It's too good. People are using too much attention. They're being drones. All of these platforms are engineered to just suck your attention. Okay. And for some, that's what we need. Again, when you scroll aimlessly, the reason that you're doing that and you get sucked into it for 20 minutes to an hour, it's because your brain is just trying to check out. You've got a stressful life. You had a hard day at work. You got to do a lot. Maybe your kiddo's sick. You're literally just trying to get out of your mind. And social media does that is able to engineer its algorithm to make it so easy for you to do that, right? The problem is you get addicted to that feeling, and then you're not accomplishing anything, right? When you use it to disengage from your life because of the stresses of life, that's how you should use it. Or as a tool to, learn, laugh, whatever. When at the end of that hour of you scrolling, you're just hungry, you're unmotivated, you're bored. That's when you know that you've got to, you might want to look at how much you've been into it. But it's funny because these tech things come out in social media, whatever, it gets demonized, and then the long winding road of being hated, and then it's a large cause of life's problems, right? Social media is an incredible tool. It is one of the craziest, awesome things that has been invented in humanity. And that might sound crazy, but when you think about what social media allows, it's not. You get to interact with anyone and anything, whether that's athletes, whatever, like whether it's meeting people that have like-minded interests of you, right? Like that is at its core is what social media is for. It's an unbelievable way to get the news. Like, news does not, if you want to know what's going on in the world, you don't turn on CNN or Fox. Whatever, that you don't do that, because now those platforms are very politicized. They are basically designed and to engagement farm their political base. If we're being real, right? Like back when I was a kid, my parents would watch the news to figure out what's going on in what's going on, right? Now, social media, say what you will about it, that is how I get my news, whether it's in sports or just in gaming, whatever. It's instant, right? Like the breaking news happens on X, and that's where I think that's a unbelievable thing. Like take hockey free agency day. If you weren't able to be at a TV to watch TSN when you were growing up about free agency or the trade deadline day, right? You were just like, what happened? Pull out your phone, instantly refresh. Friedman's just immediate. You could turn on notifications. Like that's the good part of it. But so I want to be clear here because I think that a lot of people are like, social media is the biggest problem that we have in life, and it's just not. Like there is great things about it. There is also awful things about it, and I want to touch on this because the under 16 part is the interesting part. I'm very curious to see how this plays out because I think it, to an extent, has its pros and cons. So, like I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to kids and social media and things like that is not so much it's learning how to live in it and not hide them from it. And I'll explain why in a second. So the worst part about social media, especially for kids, let's say high school. Okay, let's say high school. Because if your kid's on social media under 10, as a parent, lock that down. That is a scary situation. Do not make sure that they're not on that, okay? When you get to high school, social media will become a thing. It is the time that you were probably your most sociable, or it is your most social pressures in life. Back when we were kids, okay, even in the era of MySpace, which was a closed circle, so like there was no feed. So like the only way to see someone's MySpace page was to search them. You weren't fed that, right? Like there was no, hey, I wonder what's going on at another school in my area, right? You had to search people and know their names, right? So even in the early edition of Facebook, before like the wall, same kind of situation. When you were a kid, you compared yourself in all aspects to your neighborhood. And by neighborhood, I mean your school, your family, your city, to an extent if you played sports on a citywide scale, because you weren't able to compare it to someone you didn't know existed, right? So if you lived in a small town, your ability to be, I don't want to say an alpha, but popular, or have an easier time in high school based from a social standpoint, it was infinitely easier. Because, again, when I was growing up, if you could play sports at a decent level, I'm not talking you were on every team, but you were competent in sport, your ability, your ease of life in high school was so much easier. The problem with social media, especially for kids, is that they are now compared to the rest of the world. And that is a psychotic thing because, for example, let's say you're a gym goer. You start loving the gym when you're 16 years old, all right? A 16-year-old that can, let's say you weigh a 16-year-old boy that's 150 pounds in decent shape. 150 pounds for a 16-year-old that nowadays is actually quite big, but let's say 130, okay? 16-year-old that's 130 pounds, 140 pounds, in great shape, finds the gym, gets excited about the gym, and is stronger than everyone in his school, okay? He fires up Instagram, and he sees oh my God, all the guys that I follow. I'm now just blanking on all of the influencers that I actually watch, right? Like Bradley Martin, for example. You see these gigantic human beings, right? Or these other guys that are 20 years old, or maybe they're 18, and they are definitely taking anabolic steroids, and they think that, like their entire life is dedicated to it. So now you have this 16-year-old boy who might be able to bench 135, which is insane for a 16-year-old boy to be able to bench a plate on each side. Just rep it. Like that would be incredible for a 16-year-old. That means nothing because you've got 17-year-olds benching 225, which is 1% of the world of humans, right? That's the bad part of social media. And for girls, even worse. I can't really account for that because I don't know what it was like growing up and being in high school for a girl, but I can only imagine because they're compared within their circle so much harsher than boys. Boys, it's essentially like, are you annoying? Do you lie? And can you play sports? And I don't even mean like play them well, just play them. And if you can't do any of those, then yeah, you're probably made fun of, right? And that's, again, unfortunate, but that's just life and how it is. And getting rid of social media allows kids for under 16 to at least be able to grow up in that sense where it's just compared to your peers, right? And I think there is an important aspect of that. However, here's the danger of it, in my opinion. When you hide an entire section of people from something, when they get exposed to it, it can be very dangerous, right? Because the second these kids turn 16, for everyone that has turned 19, the before 19 and after 19, when you go drinking, is a level of 0. Some people don't drink at all. They don't sneak their dad's, beers every once in a while. Maybe they're not party goers, right? They've never had a drink before in their life. They go at one time when they're 19. They have this crazy time. Their life is a movie. And then every weekend they're like, oh man, let's just drink a 26er because they've never been experienced to it, right? That's the danger you have of that. But I'm very curious to see how that plays out. I don't think it'll ever work in North America because governments know that being able to get kids to just be addicted to these platforms and stuff allows them to advertise on them, right? Like I don't see that ever happening in North America, but very curious to see how that plays out. And just something that's shocking to see that a country is doing that, especially because Australia's a pretty big country. So anyways, let's get into Hockey Ultimate Team. We'll go through some of the questions, the last episode, some of the questions that I've highlighted. So Shara says, hey Sleeves, I'm a 31-year-old Chel player from Ohio that used to live in Pennsylvania. That is a Flyers fan. Sorry about the Sharks last night. Ooh, they got pumped. Every once in a while, the Sharks, they've been so impressive to me, but then there's nights where they get slapped around and I'm like, oh, you're not ready. This is why you need a top-end pick again. But I've been an ESHL player for quite a while and now a casual HUT player that is slowly getting back into HUT after taking a few years off. I currently don't have time to grind the game and play Cup Chase to complete as many objectives as I can with the XP path as well, as I work during the night hours. I have a healthy amount of money, but I don't want to buy packs. So I collect my free collectibles and the Advent calendar tickets. So I'm curious if I should focus on B&D or untradeable cards and sell everything that is sellable if it's not in my lineup. Also, with the Advent calendar, should I spend my tickets on multiple packs instead of just one pack for each bronze, silver, and gold? P.S. I have a Flyers themed team too. I've started spending my tickets just to see what's in these packs. They're not bad. It's all untradeable. I think probably the best thing to do is to just save your bronze and silver collectibles and get the most expensive pack. Because anytime you get free packs, it's like, might as well. I think they've made it where the cheaper packs, they're like gaming the system. They've kind of figured it out, right? The XP path, buying the most expensive thing with the XP path, that value is god-awful. But I think that's probably the play with your tickets. When it comes to if you should go B&D or Ultimate Team, it depends on the situation. So if the event has an unbelievable B&D card and it's early on in the event, so the first weekend of the event, okay, usually there's only 2 or 3 cards that you can actually pull from the account bound set. And if those cards are amazing, then yes, do it. But understand that you don't have a lot of time to grind objectives and things like that. So you need to spend it on the untradeable cards that can be used to make master set player items. That's what I would recommend. So I would not go B&D to get the best card, try and get a really high-end card. I would go untradeable to try and build master set player items. So that is what I would recommend. Sleeps. My name is Max, and my family owns a small 2-screen theater in River Falls, Wisconsin. WI is Wisconsin, I believe. That has been in the family since 76, and a drive-in with 2 screens in Minnesota. My family does it because we love movies and understand the magic that the movie theater experience brings. I really appreciate you touching on the Warner Bros. Buyout and what it means and how people complain about movie theaters dying but cannot tell you the last time they went to one. I thought you would like to know that we showed a private screening of Miracle the other day to a local hockey team, though. Anyways, love your channel. Don't stop loving movies. I love this. So I talked about the Warner Bros. Buyout and what that meant for the movie industry. Super random. My fire alarm just went off for no reason. Anyways, yeah, man, I think that what the future of movie theaters is going to be is just like a specialized experience. It's not the grandiose Cineplex anymore. I think it's going to be what you've got. Like, I think about my used game store in my area, okay? It does phenomenal. And the reason why is it just outlasted everyone. They didn't move to online sales. It is just the only place in the city that sells and buys and used games and movies. And you'd be like, how does that survive? But when you have no other options, there's people that still miss this stuff. So that doesn't surprise me. But yeah, everyone that's like, the movie, when movie theaters go away and they complain about it, it's like, when was the last time you went to the movies? Right? Like, it's not something you normally do anymore. Thurston says, I don't and won't drink anymore, even a sip, because being a young 33 father of 4, I got so drunk 2 years ago that I was still drunk the entire next day. I never want to feel like that ever again. Brother, 100%, dude. I'm with you. Talked about this the other day that like it's not so much the like drinking from like a health standpoint. It's the next morning I don't have time or the ability to deal with a hangover. So I just like the I'm with you, man. I think that this happens to almost everyone when they turn 30 for the most part. When it comes to like people that would go out like every weekend, things like that. It's that next day where you're just like, it's not worth the night before. When you go drinking, it's basically you're using like time as a credit card and the bill is the next day. That's what it's like, man. Wade says, unfortunately, golf is my addiction. I picked the expensive one. Dude, I feel like a lot of guys did. I was really good at golf before I got run over when I was a teenager and loved golf, was actually getting quite good at it. And for whatever reason, in my 20s and 30s, I've just found it so boring. It's just not for me. I don't know what it is. I've tried so much. I have my own club still. Don't know what it is, but I can understand why people love golf. Like it is a cool sport. Bro says, apparently the win streaks end in diamond, which is a big letdown, not gonna lie. So win streak rewards are in Hut. I can confirm, obviously. And I think the reason why, I actually don't think this is the worst thing. And let me explain why. Diamond is Division 1. I had a comment the other day that someone went through like the leaderboards, and last season, 300 people made Diamond. That was the same amount of people that were in Division 1 last year, roughly. So, with that being said, if you've got 300 people and they're going to blow through Diamond, Platinum, all of that, by the time you get to Diamond, if there was still Platinum and still Gold and whatnot, when you get to Diamond, if there was win streak rewards still before those 300 people, obviously there's not going to be as many wins, but you're just going to blow through it. And it's funny because a lot of people don't realize that if you just finished your goal immediately, you're not going to want to play, and you're going to be like, what? There's nothing left to do, right? So that's like an artificial, way to do it. JK says, in reference to your rundown, paste your comments into AI and prompt it for a script or outline for an hour-long podcast. This actually blew my mind because I'm starting to get into AI, and I think this might actually be a really good way to improve the show. So I appreciate you giving that. I will be looking into seeing what that looks like for sure. Using the Shark theme team will 0 wins in ranked. I mean, hey, I may be old and not that great at the game, but I guarantee it won't be as bad as you think. Kenny James, he was an angry boy. He said, you're not pissed at how this Hut team is making the game pay to play. Well, I am. I'm one of the people who would buy the packs, but the packs are absolute garbage, so I'm not buying anything now. They ruined the fantasy event. They really added juice to the game for the entire season by attaching it to real hockey. Now, nobody cares because no one could afford to build or even get the cards they wanted. Yeah, we got a couple of random B&Ds, but it's not the same as getting the players you wanted. That's the whole point of Hut, building a team of your favorite players, not the players EA decides you to have. Okay? I don't disagree. I think the way they handled the fantasy event was absolutely ridiculous, and it was the peak of their new we want your money strategy. Okay? Devil's advocate here, because I should have done this when I didn't have a theme team yet, but let's pretend I was using my Sharks theme team. You got 32 you got 32 collectibles. You just needed 8. And I know, could have afforded that, but you didn't want to give up the fact that you got 2 account bound cards. You didn't want to give up the fact that you got 2 free fantasy items. So you did those, and then you didn't get the one you want, and then you complained about the format. And I feel you, because I did the exact same thing. I wanted Liljegren. Actually, I didn't. I thought he was like the worst choice of the entire Sharks roster. But I should have got him, right? And thankfully, he is one of the worst. Like I told you guys, he's only 500K. But if I really wanted it, and if I was doing my theme team and playing the way that I wanted, where you go and prioritize the cards you want, you would have been able to get the one you wanted. It was expensive and ridiculous, but you would have at a pretty big discount. But you would have missed out on the 2 other B&Ds, and I think you're not acknowledging that. I think you're not acknowledging that you chased after getting 2 because you wanted more, and you're upset now that you did that. And I don't blame you for being upset by that, by the way. But I just want to point that out. If they really want to make money, then why don't they just sell the damn cards in the store? Sell the new icons in the store. Oh, but then it's pay to play. It already is. They sold the Kane card in the store. Why not do it with all the big cards? Sell packs that have customization cards in them. Stop pretending to not be pay to play and just go all in. The people who spend money have the best cards. It's always been that way and always will be. It's that way right now. EA is greedy, but stupid greedy because they are leaving a lot of money on the table. If they sold that Bergeron card in the store, they would have made bank. Nobody thinks that this game isn't pay to play right now, so EA should stop pretending it is. Interesting way to look at it. Let me explain why they don't do that. Okay? So, if you wanted Bergeron, okay, the only way to do that right now is to rip packs to get enough stuff to make him. If they streamlined it and just gave you a set amount of money to make Bergeron, they've just left money on the table. You see what I'm saying? Because if you rip packs, it's going to cost you more than if they just set it at $100 for an icon. Now, if they set it for like $500, maybe. But that's why they do that. Right now, when it comes to Kane and those kind of cards, it's because they give you an option to do it for free, and it's time-based. Bergeron and all those cards are not going anywhere, right? That's why they don't have cards like that individually in the store. So they're not leaving money on the table. They're making more money. It's just it sucks for the consumer because 9 times out of 10, it'd be far better to just go and buy Bergeron than what you would have to do if you wanted to spend money to get Bergeron. I decided to make Bergeron. I was not prepared for the 3 hours of deciphering exactly how to make him. Open 81 to 84 packs. By the time I was done, I couldn't even play. It was so late. Why can't we have a streamlined way to make MSPs? Like one set that you hand everything in at once. It's so frustrating. An archaic system that has been in the game since NHL 16. That's why. It's one of the worst looks in this game is that their tech structure and how they deliver content is not able to allow them to innovate how we get our content and how we make sets. That's it. It's all. MLB is nothing but sets and collections. But you just click autofill and it's all in there. The convoluted way that EA does it, they love the Madden format, where it's trade in a bunch of lower overalls, get a higher overall. Trade in those higher overalls, more of them to get an even higher overall. It's just but NHL is the absolute worst because they have no infrastructure and the tech has been around since PlayStation 3. It's like it stinks, but that's the reality. It's absolutely brutal if you were to do a card from start to finish and how long that actually takes you. So it's going to do it for this episode of Coffee and Chel. Today is Team of the Week Day, and I'm excited, but stay tuned. The first Sharks episode covering my first couple games and my team and all of that will be up. I don't know if I'll save it for when I go away next week and I just give you like a week worth of it. But if you want to watch it live, twitch.tv/NoSleeps12. I hope to see you guys there. Have a good one.